Welcome to Reptile Fight Club. This is Justin Glenn, your host. With me, as always, Rob Stone. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Excited for tonight. Excited that I've worked out you and Jordan finally wore me down. So,
we tend to do that to people. Yeah, it'll be fun times down there. Are you? Sorry, I guess I'll bring on our guest, Christian Diedrich. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks, guys. Excellent. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of your backyard to some extent. Are you planning on going to IHS?
It is. Yeah, I'm going to go to one day. I'm going to do Saturday and go for the talks. And I think that's the day you're talking. Zach's talking. So, and then stick around for the banquet. And then I'm getting out of there because, Cave Creek Road is going to be a traffic jam. There's going to be like 200 herpers out. I'm leaving.
Yeah. We've been talking about where to go to get away from the crowds rather than follow a line of cars up Cave Creek. And
we'll hit on that location.
Yeah.
We'll come. Give it some space. We'll bookmark that. We'll come to it because I have plenty of thoughts and or questions on that. So maybe continue.
Yeah,
we'll come back.
Sure. Yep. Well, I mean, I've got jungles hatched out this week, and I got some Western Stimsons wheat belts that hatched out as well. So that's been nice. The last pygmy python finally took its meal on its own. I didn't have to assist feed, so that was good. And I don't know. Other than that, things are going pretty well. I got some Centralian python eggs. I don't know how great they are. Some of them look like they're crashing, but I mean, there's 24 of them, so maybe if a few eggs die, it won't be the worst thing in the world. But a bunch of mouths to feed. But what do you do? And then business as usual, I suppose. We've had some kind of storms and storm fronts move through, and I really wanted to get out and herp, but I just haven't brought myself to do it. So I just see those gas prices and go, I don't know. Kind of wimpy these days, especially with no grant funding coming in. So yeah, that's been a little hard to take. But I don't know. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. So the monsoons have kicked off in southern Arizona. Oh, good. So last few nights have been fun.
Nice.
Neglecting all my responsibilities and spending all hours of the night on the road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't complain. We moved to Tucson back in March, and it's just been great. I love it out here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw your post, and I'm like, my backyard. He must be on a trip. And no, you've moved there. That's cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I guess for folks that don't know me, I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. I spent most of my life in Southwest Ohio, which was great. But it's kind of mind blowing being out here, and you drive in, you're coming from the grocery store, and there's just a Gila monster crossing your driveway. It's like, this is not real life.
Yeah.
This morning I got my first ever horned lizard in the backyard.
Nice. Which species?
It was a regal. Yeah.
Regal. Okay. They're cool. I haven't seen those yet. Yeah, I need to see a regal. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, they're all over the place. Come out here, you'll get a regal.
Cool. Yeah, I love Phrynosoma. I love low desert stuff. Like that's my jam. Rob's the one who kind of introduced me to the high desert nonsense, the mountain stuff. So, I mean, it's been fun to see all the montane rattlesnakes and stuff. I really enjoyed finding those and seeing the different species up there. But I think it's time for some more lowland desert herping. I need to find the Sidewinder down there. I haven't seen one of those yet. So hopefully that's on this next trip. Yeah. Shouldn't be too difficult. It's just I haven't gotten out there more than like once or twice. So yeah, I don't know if I was in the right spot. This was a while back. So yep, about time to get out there again. And also a Gila. I haven't seen a Gila since like late 1900s.
In terms of the reticulated.
Yeah, exactly.
So we saw bandits up in Utah, but and I haven't seen one at all, Christian. So
you're come to my driveway and
very jealous.
Yeah, that's I guess that's right. That's the beauty of living there is, when it starts to rain, you can get out and see stuff, or stuff comes to you, or
yeah. I think I'm at 4 since moving here, and
really?
that honestly, one of the worst parts living here is I see them dead all the time on the road, all the time. It's like, how do you
have
hit
seen
a Gila
one dead.
monster?
Yeah, and it is exactly that question, right? Where it's especially, I mean, so the spot I saw it, I suppose there's not all that much alternative, like, there's no shoulders and stuff, but at the same time, it's like, you didn't fail to see that, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst thing about herping, road cruising in general, is seeing dead herds, like, that's all I've seen for one of my big targets in Australia is the Centralian blue tongue skink, and all I've seen are dead or dying, on the road because they just got hit or they've been hit for a while. It's terrible.
Yeah. We live off, if you're familiar with the area, we live off Florida Road, and it's kind of a 2-lane highway that connects 83 and 19. And so there's so much traffic on it, and it goes through like pristine Sonoran Desert habitat, and just the road mortality is devastating.
I hate that. Yeah, that's rough. What do you do? I guess you cry a bit and move on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool though. I when I went down and saw all the Gilas, it was actually with Frank Reedus, and he took me to his study site. He made me put a bag over my head so I didn't know where I was. This was back before we had location services and phones and stuff, so it was like I really didn't know where I was, and I still don't know where it was. He did leave the bag off my head when he took me out of there, but it was crazy because he'd go, "Okay, look under that ledge," and I'd look under, we saw like lined up there. Or, look under this ledge, okay, there's 2 more. We saw 5 to 7 somewhere around there, like a good handful of Gilas. It was pretty sweet.
That's
and
incredible.
He knew like most of the individuals. I think we saw a lyre snake, a mating pair of western diamondbacks. It was a nice outing. Not to mention his, monitor collection at the time was pretty phenomenal as well. So saw my first Parenti.
Very cool.
Pretty cool. But I have a fondness for Tucson. Although my dad and I went down to visit Frank, and we just camped out. Like we didn't even bring a tent or anything, so we just kind of laid our sleeping bags out under the stars at somewhere between Phoenix and Tucson. And I think we got kicked off a road for trying to sleep on the on the side of the road. We were road cruising and stuff, but it was February, so it was a little chilly, and it got really cold in the night. I think we woke up and it was in the 40s or 50s or something. We're like, we got to get in the car and warm up a bit, but it was kind of crazy. So kind of a whirlwind trip there, but it was pretty fun to see.
Very cool.
You don't get sick of that area. It's really a cool place.
Yeah. My wife and I wanted to move somewhere where we could just have kind of a more active outdoor life. And like for probably 5 years, we really wanted to, or really motivated to move, but we never really found the place. We thought about Florida for a while, and then for a number of reasons, Florida seemed unappealing. So we held off. And then I actually came out here for the first time last August. And it was like, I don't know. It was just like one of those moments where everything clicked for me. I was like, this is my favorite place I've been. I mean, I think I was here 6 days. I think I slept for like 12 hours. I couldn't get enough. The desert's dangerous because, especially when there's elevation, because you can start your day, early morning, you can walk around the desert. It gets warmer. You can just go up the mountain, walk around, hike for snakes. It starts to get dark. You start cruising, and then you can literally go down low and find snakes at all hours of the night. So when you lack impulse control like me, it's kind of a dangerous place to be.
Right. That's fun. Yeah. Definitely some good herps there. I mean, it's and also in the West, you have, BLM land where you can, go and walk around. You don't have to worry about trespassing on private property or getting shot at or things you still do, but like it's there's places where you can roam and get off the beaten path and go kind of explore, which is nice. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I was joking the other day because I had a border patrol stop where they held me for like 20, 25 minutes the other night. But I was joking with a friend. I was like, I'm used to back east trying to convince law enforcement that I'm not looking for snakes. Cause you're always herping state parks and whatnot. Like out here,
Right.
I'm trying to. It's the opposite. I'm like, no, I'm a snake hunter. Let me go.
Yeah, really. Look at my phone. Look at all the pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's
all
pretty
right.
great. Do you want to give us some of your background? So I guess I will give the context, right? The admission that I heard your episode with Zach and Clint on Colubrid and Colubroid Radio back last fall, early winter, something like that. And I thought it was great. I was really impressed with your verve. It took me to the Instagram page, and I saw all these great pictures. And I also saw in their watch along that there were a whole bunch of albums that you guys didn't wind up getting to talk about. And I said, well, I have just the context to talk about both some of the material you already covered and then all those things that you didn't cover. And I'm sure what wasn't even in there. So you want to give us your background a little bit, and then we'll do this as we're Haranguing the Herpers. We got lots of different, hopefully good prompts to get you talking about your different ideas and things.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. So I grew up in Southwest Ohio. I think as long back as I can remember, we lived right like in front of a creek, and my dad and I would go out and walk the creek, flipping rocks for salamanders and snakes and crawdads, and that was kind of like my first introduction to what I would much later learn as herping. I think we had a little property like 25 minutes from where I lived, where we actually had an eastern Massasauga population. So I think maybe the second ever snake I saw was a Massasauga rattlesnake.
Wow.
Which was cool. I totally lost on me at the time. But unfortunately that population has since been extirpated. But that was kind of my intro to it. I think kind of all growing up, I kept lizards, I kept leopard geckos, and actually I think my first reptile was a Chinese water dragon, which I wouldn't recommend as a first reptile to anybody. But yeah, I've always been kind of into the outdoors, and once I got into my professional life and I had a little bit more freedom, I started taking trips places to look for wildlife, and somewhere along the way I realized herping was like a hobby that other people did, and I wasn't the only weirdo who poked around the wood for snakes. So I really probably got much more into it around like 2018, 2019.
Okay.
And I also keep snakes. I've got what I'd probably say a medium collection. I've got probably about 150 animals right now.
Mm-hmm.
I breed on a small scale. I sell under a storefront called Select Snakes, which is also the Instagram. I post all my field herping stuff too. So I mostly keep New World colubrids and colubroid snakes. Also have a couple of the American boids, but yeah, I've been herping pretty much my whole life. I think starting around 2018, I started actually taking like dedicated trips to places. Definitely like a shameless life lister. Like chasing the list is a big part of what has gotten me to see a lot of the country, places I never would have stepped foot in, which I think is such a cool part of this hobby that kind of gets overlooked.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I've probably herped in at least 30 states, and now I live in Southern Arizona, like 20 minutes south of Tucson.
Very cool. What kind of progress are you making on
what's your list, right?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of the question too.
Yeah.
I mean, I know both Justin and I, well, I'll speak for myself, but I think Justin feels the same. That is the beauty of the list, right? Is the idea to get you to places that you're not otherwise going, or to ideate, what do I do next or whatever. But what does that list specifically look like? I know you mentioned snakes to the U.S. Is it more finite than that? Did you work out to that? What does that look like?
Yeah. So for me, it started with snakes of Ohio when I lived in Ohio. Mm-hmm. And I eventually checked all those off. I didn't get them all in Ohio. I never got erythrogaster, which may or may not even exist in Ohio, and I never got a brachystoma in Ohio, but I've seen them other places. And eventually, after like 7 or 8 trips to Youngstown, Ohio, I was very okay living with the fact that I probably would never see one in Ohio.
Yeah.
Not my favorite city.
What were those 2 species? Give me the common names.
Sorry.
Erythrogaster is that a Nerodia?
Plain-bellied water snake. Yeah.
Okay.
And then the short-headed garter snake.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's how it started. Eventually it turned into all the snake species in the US, and that's probably like the one I'm most focused on.
Yeah.
I'm at 116, and I think my list is about 174 or so.
Nice.
Yeah, that becomes the other part of the fun, the question and things. I don't know that I've even defined what my number would be and I don't know if you've heard the show, but I talk about it in the context of forms because I don't want to be beholden to taxonomic anarchy, right? So that's a lot of looking at old Right and Right from the 50s, I take is really instructive, and then kind of looking at it critically and saying, okay, does this still make sense? What is the South Florida specific, the Miami-Dade County coral snake really its own thing, or was that kind of the fact that we weren't in a globalized world right at that point? Right. How do you take that?
Yeah, I keep it at the species level, and I do kind of have a background goal of seeing them in every state they occur. So that and that's more just to give me something else to do as it gets harder to check new species off.
Right.
So I generally comport to SSAR. I think, when I read papers that are very compelling, I probably am a little quicker to adopt splits and such than they are. But I think my list generally tracks theirs. And I include some of the stupid stuff I'm never going to see, like the Baja California rosy rat and the yellow-bellied sea snake. So I think my goal is like substantially all the snakes. There's probably a good 4 or 5 I'll never get, but I want to check off the rest of them.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm working. I'm almost to the point of seeing all the snakes in Utah. I think I have 5 or so left to go. The blind snake and ringnecks are surprisingly difficult in Utah. They're one of the ones that's just unpredictable, and you got to be lucky or something. I don't know. Although my buddy Pat May, he and Rye Jones found like 5 or 6 on one day, like ridiculous. Crazy event where maybe it was even more than that. Like it was insane. And they're like, I don't know what happened. It just, those kind of things are fun, but yeah, it doesn't happen to me too often.
Do you get the great big regal ringnecks?
Yeah.
And I had my very first encounter with one of those last night. Actually, it was.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It was almost 3 feet long. My Midwest mind was blown. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah, and that was kind of I was going to make a point regarding, herping to the species level is like, you see a ringneck back east and you see a ringneck in Arizona, and they are not the same animal. Like they shouldn't even be the same species probably, but it's kind of crazy. So that was kind of the other question is, do you, there's a lot of, I guess, and I think SSAR has quite a few different subspecies and things like that. So.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason I keep track of the states I see stuff in is because it's a little easier to remember, after a split, have I seen that? Like I think Arizona elegans got split recently, and so I know I've seen them in California, I've seen them in Arizona. I have not seen a live one in like Texas, so that's a new species I need now.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. I mean, the species count just keeps going up, but I guess that gives us another, more targets to go after. But
I can always use a good excuse to go to Texas.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm curious, actually. I don't think I've taken the time really to break those out. I'm curious what Right and Right, if that's the interesting thing, right? I'm actually very curious. Maybe I'll take a brief break here to look in Right and Right and see whether the Texas form was described back in the 50s as a different thing, right? Or if that's something where we're re-recognizing something that previously existed and either had a name or didn't, but showed up as, these are actually, we do see a clinal range, from the California stuff through Utah and all that, which is, I think, where we've seen them. Justin, I don't know if you've seen
elegans is the glossy, right? Is that what we're talking about? Yeah. So, there are, three different forms or subspecies or whatever. Yeah. I was looking at that as well with the patch nose snakes as well. They seem to kind of follow a similar trend where they're different, in Texas and Arizona and
almost like there's a reason.
Right. There might be some reason to that. Yeah. I I don't know. Like I've been thinking probably too much about taxonomy because I don't know enough about taxonomy to really think about it in, but some things just don't make sense when you see, some of these papers come out and you're like, that makes no sense to me. Like, I can't see how you're doing that, but I don't know.
My worldview on taxonomy is pretty unpopular among herpers. I think, I have a lot of friends, honestly, in the Burbrink lab, and I think they're at the forefront of molecular work, and I don't think anything tells a clearer story about evolutionary relationships than the genes themselves. So I think almost all the work that's come out of that lab is good work. I recognize all their splits, and I know people like to look at the snake and know what it is, absent location or whatever, but I'm definitely on the Burbrink side of things.
I think maybe a critical point, and maybe this is the change that we're starting to see over time. So we just actually did our second from our reconstituted Boas podcast. We just had our second episode last night, recorded that, which is good. And obviously, so Dr. Warren Booth is one of the co-hosts there on the show. And this is one of his various, many areas of interest. But I think one of the profound changes we're having over time is that we're actually sequencing the entire genome, and that tells so much more. I think the thing that I previously have had taken issue with, right, is the idea that we're isolating three genes within a snake and saying, oh, they're only 5 million years different. Who cares? It's not a big deal. And it's like, well, you're missing, I don't know, probably 90% of the remaining genes that exist within that animal. When you're saying that, you're making your determination, and then you're also understating the impact of 5 million years of divergence, right? Both those things are things I take issue with. But to your point, to the extent that so many advancements, we're getting so much closer to actually looking at the full picture, I do find it a lot more persuasive. And I think the Burbrink Lab is doing that much more so than 10, 15, 20 years ago. So that is much more persuasive. And from that perspective, then I tend to be more deferential to it, for sure.
Right.
Who knows, Justin? We're almost working into a fight here.
You're right. Yeah,
maybe next time.
Well, I think the thing that I continue to harp on, and it kills me, is it depends on who's doing the research. The changes that are made depends on who's doing the research. If you don't subscribe to the idea of subspecies or whatever, then you're going to lump stuff, or you're going to, do things differently than somebody who has a different view of species concept or different species concept altogether. So that's kind of what's, that kind of bad taste in my mouth, is it's just not consistent. Like, it's hard, and so it's hard to say, oh yeah, that works.
Snakes, right. There's two different orders. There's a completely different tolerance for subspecies and local variation.
And mammals, forget about it. I mean, if we based the taxonomy of mammals, we'd just all be, apes. Like, there'd just be one species of ape, and it would include us and chimpanzees and gorillas and stuff. I don't know. I'm being a little dramatic there, I'm sure, but there is a little bit of a lot of bias in taxonomy, which I don't know. I don't like biases, but I guess they exist. So what do you do? And the data can kind of. Jordan kind of made the comment like, you can take anything. I mean, down to the individual. We're all different from each other in some way, So where do you draw the line of here's a species and this is not this is a different species, or you're all the same species or whatever.
So, right. It's all about the structure. And if we don't fundamentally disagree about what the structure is, it seems like we used to agree more back when we were in school than we do now, right? In terms of species concept and all those things. It seems like there's more tolerance for a wider range of paradigms than there was 40 years ago. Yeah.
Well, and the species concepts have expanded. We have a better understanding of how things are actually interrelated, and that just because something can breed to another, thing doesn't make them the same species. There's all sorts of different.
The culture has proven that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's like the tough part of it, is it's essentially a semantic argument at this point, because there's the data set where we can literally look at every base pair. When we have genetic tissue from two animals, we can look at every base pair, and so we can observe the biological fact of what genetic material these animals share and don't share. So everything past that is just an interpretation of it, and semantically deciding what does a species mean. And there is like a very fundamental disagreement on that. And I think that drives the inconsistency you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's so I think back to Rob's point is, forms are important. Like that's, localities or forms. Like you said, if you find a species in the state, then you've probably found all the form. If you find each one in each state, you've probably found all the forms of that species. So you're covered. I think I'm just still bent out of shape that they changed, chuckwallas from obesus to adder. I just don't agree with that change. Obesus is just such a great name. Anyway, yeah. So have you always been into reptile? Sorry, Rob, did you want to add anything to that? Or
no, the last thing I was going to say, was in that same vein.
Okay.
And speaking of Warren again, right, is just the idea that they're showing heterozygosity variation, right, just based on random mutation and things amongst asexually produced offspring, which is pretty wild, right? And that's kind of the paper. I think that's still forthcoming. We had discussed it very briefly, but I mean, to that point, right, Christian, that you're making, that if you take it to the narrowest level, even in something that should theoretically be, clonal, that we're seeing variants. And that's really, so if you took it to the most extreme splitter position, then nothing is the same. Even those things that are theoretically clones are not actually the same.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you really want your mind blown, I was visiting with an ant researcher, and he was telling me this crazy population structure of this ant colony where there's basically a species that has taken over another species, and also a third species, like taking them over sexually somehow. So when they're producing workers, it's this one species, but when they're producing queens, it's another species. And then one of the species doesn't even have to be present to be produced. It's bizarre. I'm like, I need to ask him again, because I think I've heard it twice and I still don't understand but yeah, I think they published in Nature or Science, like a pretty high profile journal, but he was like looking at the genetics going, this doesn't make any sense. They're not from here. Like they're not in this colony. Like we collected from a specific colony, and then looking at it, it was some bizarre, weird triangle of different species. And it really blows the species concept, out of the water in a lot of ways that way. So kind of crazy, but
that's cool.
Yeah. Nature is amazing and fascinating. And if only I had several lives to lead, maybe in one of those lives I could be a taxonomist or piss everybody off, but anyway, so have you always been into snakes? Have you always been into reptiles? Is that
definitely? Yeah. From a young age, walking the creeks. I mean, I loved finding everything. Snapping turtles were killer, but a snake's always had a special place in my heart. I don't know why. Honestly, I have no idea. Right. I've gotten Freudian on that. Part of me wonders is how I was a kind of precocious, awkward kid, like most people that like reptiles. And part of me wonders, snakes are kind of like an outsider. I wonder if that played a role, but I don't know. But I like everything too. I've gotten really into birding recently, and
sorry, Rob.
That's that's honestly my biggest herping tip to people who really want to see a target species or something is become a birder.
Right.
I think the broader you cast your interest in the natural world, the more time you want to spend outside looking for stuff, the more enjoyment you'll get being in the field. And I'm a firm believer that time spent in habitat is by far the best predictor of success when you're looking for something. Mm-hmm. And so if you go out and you can entertain yourself on a day where you don't see snakes, it makes it way easier to grind day after day in that habitat to see that thing you like.
Yep, for sure.
Living out here, the mammals, the birds, everything. I don't care when conditions are bad for snakes. I'm still outside.
Nice. I
saw you
go ahead.
Sorry, Justin. I saw you posted a ringtail last night, and that is awesome. As Justin alluded to, I'm not that much into the birds at this point. There's walkie birds, flyy birds, swimming birds. But I do like all of it. It's not that I don't love all those other things. It's just the level of appreciation, right? But man, that ringtail looks pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. The mammals out here. I one of my first nights out here, I got to watch 2 mountain lions chase each other down.
No way.
And I was like, this is cool. I've seen bears.
Yeah.
The skunks. We have like 5 species of skunks. Last week I saw a hooded skunk, which is like a super elegant, large skunk with 2 kits that were kind of like, she was like walking and they're like trying to suckle, and she was kind of grabbing them by the nape of their neck, like kittens. I mean, it was like one of my favorite things I've seen.
That's awesome.
Out here. Yeah.
I just picked up a thermal camera, so I'm excited to try that out in Southeast Arizona. Yeah, that's gonna be a good thing.
Awesome.
But yeah, it's supposed to have a pretty good range, so you can just see, whatever's warm blooded. So birds and mammals I should add a few more species this way.
That's very cool. Have you seen the Trogon yet?
Yeah. It was kind of crazy because these guys had left me. I was walking down the trail pretty slow because I knew Trogons were in the area or whatever. And I was just frustrated because I think I saw a painted redstart. So I was pretty excited about that and trying to get pictures of it and stuff. And that's my failing, I think, is trying to get pictures of birds, because every time I get them focused, they fly away, so I was walking out of there, it was getting dark, and I was like, oh man. And then all of a sudden this bird just flew up and landed on a branch, like right in front of me, just, well in viewing range. And I'm like, oh, is that some pigeon or something? What is that, a dove? And so I zoomed in on it and I'm like, that's green, that's red, that's a trogon. I was like, oh sweet. So I got my trogon, and I've heard a few, gotten their calls on eBird or whatever, but I haven't seen one since. I've just seen that one. But, very cool birds. I've seen a couple of different. We went to Costa Rica, and that's like,
I bet that's amazing.
Oh my gosh, we saw 3 or 4 of the Quetzals, which was pretty phenomenal. They like take it to the next level with that long tail feathers and stuff. But really, I agree 100%. Just adding the other interests, and I'm getting into all sorts of different bugs, and Jordan's heavily into spiders, so he's kind of influencing in that way. Like, oh, check out this This is a North American species that typically found in Australia or
the undescribed. He's like, oh, this is definitely something that is a different thing that's unique to this place.
Right.
Yeah. Very cool.
Right. And Dave Barker was going to write a Moths of Texas or Moths of US or something. Well, he started doing the lights and the sheets and everything, and he counted 700 different species on his own property. And so he went, there's no way I'm ever going to make a moths of. So he went moths of my backyard. Or I think he changed it to like an introduction to mothing or something. So but it's kind of cool stuff. Like there's just such diversity. I was walking back to our car at work, on campus, and they've planted a bunch of milkweeds like on campus, and it's kind of cool, some more natural native plants. But I noticed this bright red bug, and it had, spots on black spots like a ladybug, but it was long and had really long antenna. And I'm like, what is, so I love INAT just for that reason. So I threw it in there, and it's like a milkweed borer or some weird beetle species, and it's bright red and just really a nice looking beetle, and that one that we found down in St. George, Rob, with it was just this bright yellow large beetle flying into the tree. I'm like, oh, this must be one of those invasive Asian beetles, but no, it was a native beetle I'd never heard of, and pretty cool stuff.
Well, and even speaking of INAT moths, all these different things, where my mind was going is, I think today, right, we got an INAT email that was like, there's some moth within New Zealand that had been thought extinct for 50 years, and now there are 20 INAT records. It was realized that it wasn't actually extinct based on the first one, and subsequently there's been 19 more, and that's pretty wild.
Yeah, that's cool.
Speaking of INAT, is that something you utilize or contribute to?
I don't post observations to INAT. I did for a little bit.
Same with Rob.
I'd really worry about burning spots. And I think that's like one of the big negatives of herping And even, even well-intentioned people who, it's just, you can overlove sites, and and I've seen it happen where, I mean, there was some beautiful habitat in Missouri comes to mind, where I just watched year after year, the habitat got worse and worse. It was a glade where there's all these rocks and, such great density of like speckled kings and stuff. And, even when people reset rocks in their spot, if 20 people flip a rock in a season, like there's no coming back from that. And
well, and even in a humid state, right? So you're talking about Missouri, that's entirely different than flipping rocks in Arizona, which is different from Utah and Colorado in terms of that moisture seal, right? How many times can that be flipped and still be efficacious? But simultaneously, right? So I've been rereading, I love the Carl Kaufeld books, and I've been developing thoughts around this, right? Because some of those things are explicitly highlighted, including down by you. Others are not, right? They're presented very generally. We just talked to Dallin Kohler, who wrote the really good kind of book in that same vein, Pyro, who was a student up in Utah, and then talks about his challenge of finding pyros in the field in Utah. And it's an interesting question, because I do wonder if sometimes, and I don't know how INAT fits into this, right? It's not necessarily one for one. But if we talk about in those Kaufeld contexts, we've seen it at Crossley and the Pine Barrens in New Jersey. He put that in there, and that's and it's something I definitely want to talk to you about. It's just finding stuff in longleaf pine sand habitat, right? I think that's difficult in the best of times. And if we are seeing sort of overuse of a specific spot, that can have a detrimental effect on that population. Simultaneously, if it's driving everyone's effort toward that specific place rather than looking for their own spot, is that sort of localized negative impact actually saving other positive places because people aren't looking in those other non-sort of highlighted spots?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something I've thought about. I think it probably varies. I definitely think herpers are a little bit like lemmings. Like we love the
you want to
easy
go to the
win, the known quantity. I think we could all do with being a little bit more creative. I mean, I see it down here, man. There's like 5 or 6 roads that are famous roads, and there are literally roads off of those roads, which are pretty amazing, and no one knows on them because they're not the road that people talk about. And so as now a local in a kind of herping destination, I kind of like it because I'm finding all the other roads where people don't know their name, and when the whole world's down here in the monsoons, I can be on different roads. But I think there's something to that. It's hard to, I mean, it depends on how general the habitat is, right? Like the habitat I'm thinking about in Missouri, there's not many examples of it. And so something like that is probably a little bit more detrimental, just because it's different. Like canyon habitat is a dime a dozen out in Arizona, but this kind of habitat in Missouri, there might only be 7 or 8 properties that are really pristine examples of it, and so it's probably a little bit more vulnerable. But I think there's something to that, right? Like if everyone's herping the same stuff, the snakes that don't live there are probably living a little bit better lives.
Well, and it's one thing, right? If it's the popular book, certainly the Snakes and Snake Hunting was the book for the 20 years after its publication in terms of influencing field herpers. INAT, if you have pins for all 7 or 8 spots that have that sort of habitat, then it doesn't have that same utility, right? It is sort of a different thing. So I think that's a fair point as well.
But by the same token, like if it's private land and they're developing it for whatever, then they're probably removing it completely. Sure. Yeah, like are herpers the worst thing? Probably not. But yeah, we definitely could improve our ethics a bit. But and also like placing artificial cover. I mean, obviously those a lot of those places are state parks or you shouldn't be putting junk out in state parks, but if there's private land where there's good habitat, maybe that could actually help. Or
right, if people are willing. You mentioned, Christian, early on that the Masaga population that would have been one of the first ones that you'd encountered, that's gone. Is that a reflection of habitat modification? It's probably not poaching, I would assume.
It's hard to say. I think Massasaugas in particular, this has happened over a lot of their range where they just wink out. And I know there's been some talk that there might be a blood parasite that they really struggle with. They might be particularly susceptible to like genetic bottlenecking. I don't know. I know pesticides have also been floated. The property that I used to see them on was surrounded by ag land, so could play a role. But it's hard to say. There's nothing obvious. It still to this day looks like good Massasauga habitat. There's still really strong Clenophis population. All the other snakes held on, but the Saugas just disappeared. So yeah, I don't know.
Have you seen them elsewhere at this point? I know there are a couple on your Instagram.
I have, yeah. Some of my favorite observations I've seen, I think 3 different times I've seen females very shortly after giving birth, still with all of, the neonates, and very cool, very like meaningful observations for me. I think about 2-3 years ago, I stopped looking for them. In part because they're just so imperiled, and I didn't want to feel like I was playing any role in having a negative impact on the couple populations that are still going strong. So I kind of encourage people not to look for them because that really is, I think we can quibble over some snakes and their different designations, but that really is a very threatened species in a lot of its range. And it's, and there is some evidence that, maybe they're particularly susceptible to pathogens for whatever reason. So I stopped looking for them because I didn't feel good about it. I didn't want to risk, hey, maybe I'm the asshole that transmits something into this stronghold and ruins everything. So that's kind of how I ended things with Massasaugas. But it's definitely like a snake that's very special to me.
Mm-hmm. We were fortunate, thanks to Justin's effort last year, to be able to see our lifer easterns in Pennsylvania. But to the point that you make, right, we're talking about something that even within the last 20 years has gone from almost double-digit viable populations down to just, half that or less.
Yeah, it was fascinating to hear. So we actually, Nipper was the one who put us in contact with the ranger there, and he kind of chatted him up a bit, and the English charm, and so he was talking to us and telling us, hearing their life history and things was incredible, and just how predictable they are, like when they're going to come up out of the burrows and when they're going to go down, and how much fire, good fires play a role in maintaining the habitat they need, and all these different things factor in. So I could see any one of those going wrong and seeing their populations decline. It's kind of a sad state of things, but I mean that population is at least managed pretty well, and they're doing a good job at conserving them. And so we got to actually get hands on it because since he chatted up the ranger said, "Oh, we've got a college class coming, and so we're gonna be looking for him. You're welcome to join us." So the other guys I kind of shadowed him a little bit and was following. I talked to the professor of the class or whatever and was just kind of chatting with her. And then he said, "All right, everybody kind of spread out, and we're gonna tromp across this field of grass or whatever." I'm like, "Oh, sweet," because in this area you stick to the trails, you don't go off trail, and so this is how they find them, I guess, and kind of march in a line. And somebody had said, "Oh, there's a snake," and so I went to see what it was, like a garter snake or something else, and then so I'm like, well, I'm out here, I might as well help out, so I start walking, and there was one just curled right up. So I think I stole the thunder a bit from the class. But, like, here's one. They're like, oh, come on, the weird old guy jumping in and stealing our thunder. But so he got it in a Rubbermaid container. We weighed it. I got to insert a chip, a pit tag, and so that was pretty fun. And the kids were a little bugged that I was doing that. But in my day job, I inject lots of animals, for my work, so used to a needle.
And then on release, he was very accommodating in terms of letting letting us take, pictures of it within its natural habitat and things as we let it go. So it was
very cool.
Sat
really
and
cool.
made sure we were, treating it well, and kind of hung out with us. And he's like, "Are you good?" And we're like, "Yeah." And then he kind of, and it was crazy because it took off, and then we were kind of hanging around the area, just chatting with him a bit, and then we're like, "Well, let's see if we can find it again." It was nowhere to be found. It was gone. Pretty lucky, I guess, to see those. But
that's cool.
So it's tricky though, because there's very few herps where people will go to that length. They had all sorts of different monitoring systems out there, and they were burning different areas different ways, removing trees to make sure that stayed in this marshy kind of grassland
monitoring
habitat.
Year over year. They were restoring additional adjoining habitat to try and expand the area that was acceptable. And I know Zach's involved with that too, or is getting involved.
I heard about that.
Yeah. So with his crayfish knowledge, that was the other crazy thing, is how in sync they are with the crayfish burrows, and using those burrows to overwinter. Pretty amazing interaction there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the big things that really got me excited about your interview was talking about natural history, and understanding a species' natural history is so critical to A, finding them, and B, understanding what they need. And so you're not damaging their habitat like we're talking about, or, so that we're not putting them at risk, like with, the boots. And I mean, we had Joe Mendelson on here, who is a professor up at my university, and he was big amphibian researcher, and was monitoring all these sites in Central and South America, and just noticing there's no more frogs here anymore. Like, what is going on? And noticing, even with streams, when there was moss in the stream, that means the frogs have disappeared from this area because the tadpoles aren't eating the moss, which, crazy stuff. And then finally figuring out it was a fungus, and that a lot of times some of the researchers were the reason that the fungus was there, because they weren't sterilizing their boots between sites or whatever. So kind of crazy how that all panned out, and very tragic, we're still seeing the effects of that. But so I appreciate that you bring that, to kind of the attention of you never know what you're transmitting or moving around. But.
Yeah, well, and it is a different experience when you witness it. I mean, you can read all the studies you want with numbers and figures and percentages, and it's all an abstraction. But when there's a place you went as a kid and you saw rattlesnakes, right, and then you go back as an adult and there's no rattlesnakes, it feels different. It feels more like a loss, and I think it gives you that kind of perspective that, hey, these really are imperiled animals, and everything. As hobbyists, I think one of the premises that, we respect these animals. And so we have some duty to, go about our herping responsibly, ethically, and do what we can to protect these animals. 'Cause they need all the help they can get, really.
Right. And that's no more disappointing than finding just a habitat that's been trashed, but obviously by herpers, I guess we've seen a few in the mountain ranges there in southern Arizona. All these rocks were overturning logs. I'm pretty sure it was a bear, but you kind of have it in the back of your mind.
We went to one that was a little bit back and beyond. It was not the kind of the normal ones.
Yeah.
And we were seeing all these giant rocks, and I'm just going, who would have gone to the effort that it has taken to get us to this point, and then just not put a rock back? And then it was like, oh, this is actually probably a bear that was looking for me.
I was like, stupid herpers. And then it's like, oh, wait, this is probably a bear. Yeah. But I mean, I guess maybe talk more to the understanding natural history. That's one of my favorite topics of, if you understand their natural history and kind of their interactions with other species in the land. And
well,
how's that?
Yeah. Real quick before you got into that, I did find, profound, if not moving, your idea that you had expressed on your CCR appearance, the idea of being in the right place, the right time, and then detectability, or your ability to detect things within that space.
Yeah, I think that, that's the secret formula, right? That's herping, and natural history is it ties into a couple of those prongs, right? It's if you know how an animal behaves, you can know the right conditions to be out. You can know the habitat it wants. Where you want to be to see it. And then when you're in that habitat, if you understand how it behaves, specifically where to look for it. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the rewarding things, right? I'm a lifelong, bookworm. I love learning, and I think the more you can learn about a snake, the better you can understand it, the better you can find it. There's so many good books out there to tap into, and I don't know. Like for me, hiking is my favorite method of finding snakes because you get the context of the animal. It's pretty hard to see real kind of behaviors when you're road cruising or you're flipping something or 10, you see, one behavior. But when you actually get yourself into the habitat, I mean, all my favorite herping memories have been when I see something in its habitat, something eating something, mating or like whatever it is. I just think getting the whole context for the organism, where it lives, what it's doing, like that's kind of what it's all about for me. I still road cruise and stuff, but it's just not the same.
No. Yeah. And what are some of your favorite natural history moments that you've witnessed?
Yeah. Let's see. Last August, I saw a willardi, a very young willardi, eating a tree lizard. That was very cool.
That's cool.
He already had, I think, 2 food boluses too, so he was doing well.
Yeah.
Predation's fun. I've seen some great. At one time, I was hiking a trail and I saw a getula with its head down a hole, and I panicked, because you're a herper, you're like, oh, the snake's about to escape down a hole.
Right.
So I grabbed the snake, I yank it up, and it's got this turtle egg just in its mouth.
Wow.
And I have it in my hand while it's swallowing this turtle egg. It's so cool.
That's cool.
I watched a rough green snake catch and eat a dragonfly. That was pretty awesome.
That's an impressive catch. Yeah.
Yeah. And it took it about 50 minutes to swallow the whole thing.
Wow.
That was cool. I've seen mating. I've seen a big breeding ball of the Outer Banks water snakes, which are some of my favorite water snakes in the world. And I was just sitting there watching, and it was started as like 2 males and a female. And as I sat there videoing it, I think it ended up being like 9 males were just emerging. It was a coastal riffraff. They were up on a rock that was on the sound, and males were literally emerging out of the sound to join in. And I don't know. It's like, I feel like a Nat Geo videographer or something.
Right. Yeah. I did get lucky once road cruising, though. I came upon a king brown or a mulga snake that was eating a roadkill death adder. And so it was and I got all excited. I'm taking pictures and stuff. It just looked like, it was weird. But then noticed it eating something, and then it stopped and noticed the lights and the commotion. And so it spit it out and took off. And so I got a hook and I took the death adder over to it and put it in front of it, and it ate the whole thing in front of me. So I got to sit and take pictures. It was pretty cool. That's
cool. We don't think of snakes as scavengers, but I've seen at least 4 times snakes scavenging very dead things that are not even close to living. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. I actually just published that observation in Herp Review last year. Yeah. Finally got around to it. We saw it in 2011 or no 13. Yeah. They're 12. Yeah. Somewhere around there.
That's very cool.
But that was a fun experience with my wife out herping, in the outback of Australia. Kind of crazy. So I guess, I in that context too, if you understand, what they're doing at certain times of year, all those kind of things just really factor into it. And how does that, I guess, affect your trip planning? Are you pretty obsessive about, I need to be here at this time so I can perhaps catch, basking whatever in the morning? Or, or do you just go, I'm going to hit this area and hike all the cool trails, and if I find a snake, great? Or how do you go about your trip planning?
Yeah, it's definitely both for me, because I actually like going out sometimes when I know conditions are like, bad.
Sure.
And in air quotes, just because you never know what you're going to see. And sometimes you learn interesting things.
Right.
Like I think one example, I've seen so many brown eye since living out here. And it's part of it's because I road cruise when conditions are bad. And
those are the saddle.
Turns out, saddle leaf nose,
yeah.
Yeah,
I want
they
to see
love
one of
warm,
those so
dry
bad.
June nights.
Really?
No one else is road cruising. Apparently.
Okay, that's cool.
But on the flip side, like it is fun to really dial in specifics, and
Right.
like when you're really investing time and resources into a trip, you kind of want to maximize your chance of having success. So for most of my non-local herping, I do try to hit the best conditions I can, and I'm pretty spontaneous, so. Yeah. It's kind of like, if I'm on a slow period with work and the stars align and I see, oh, hey, like West Texas just got a bunch of rain and it looks pretty good out there. Like I might decide a couple hours before a trip that I'm going.
Right.
And like that, like being able to be spontaneous really helps. Like,
oh yeah,
scheduling herp trips way in advance is like a fool's errand.
So that was going to be my question. So you sort of alluded to this on the CCR episode, right? That a lot of it is you're being reactive to that, and we actually just talked about it. I think both the last two episodes that we recorded, but we brought it up in that I think that's particularly important in West Texas, and it probably is super helpful too in longleaf habitat, just because in those spaces we're mostly talking about things that you have to find while they're active, right? And that I keep saying the 5 to 15% when they're active, because you can't find them sort of estivating. In the same way, you can find a lot of rattlesnakes in Arizona when they're estivating, right? Because they're not necessarily below ground. They can be tucked away in a way that you could also still find them. But relative to that, are you generally just watching the weather across the U.S., or is it that you have kind of ideas, a priority list within your mind, and you're thinking, okay, it is this season, and I'm interested in still seeing animals in this area. So it's kind of, there are a handful of spots that you're checking out and saying, hey, do any fit into the box? Or is it that you just totally attuned to the entire U.S. map of weather and saying, okay, drop it all, I'm going to Idaho?
No, definitely I have a couple spots in mind usually that I'm watching, often informed a little bit by my list or species I really like or places I really like. So, like the Outer Banks, for example, is one of my favorite places on the planet. That was one when we were living in Ohio. I would constantly be watching what do things look like in the Outer Banks. The Simus trip you're talking about, I very much was, hey, I'm gonna take a trip down to Longleaf this fall. I'm gonna watch the weather in a couple spots I like, and really, try to hit the perfect conditions. So yeah, it's very much like, I usually have an idea of a couple places I want to go, and I just kind of watch those places and see when the time's right.
What apps do you use to kind of track the weather patterns? What are helpful apps for you?
Yeah, recently I've been using WeatherWise a lot. It's got a lot of the like different NOAA models built in. You can get a radar composite of the country. You can get almost all the outlooks. I like Precip. It's the best app I found for actual like accumulated rainfall, which is kind of hard to get good data on.
Right.
Those are probably the main two I use these days.
Cool.
Well, and a lot of that comes down to they're not necessarily reporting stations for all the places that are exactly where we want to be. And there is surprising variance, right? We saw it when we were down in the Palencios in the fall, is that we got kind of a late monsoon that I think was good for the Pels generally, but not necessarily for us turning up herps. But literally
certain
canyon
herps,
over canyon. Right.
Yeah.
Well,
the turtles were great. Yeah.
Certainly it changed the turtle abundance, if nothing else, over the course of the week and whatever. But more so, kind of above the road, okay, I would see the storm coming, and then below the road there wasn't rain, which is kind of wild that in that sort of an area. And we don't, absent really good modeling, as you say there, we don't have visibility into that from a distance.
Yeah, and that's been a big adjustment out west because conditions matter everywhere, but out west it seems they matter much, much more. And
Right.
like back east, a lot of our weather systems were very frontal, so you know generally you'd have pretty accurate forecasts. They weren't super location specific. Here, like you said here, I mean, it can be raining on one side of the mountain and not the other. So you
Yeah.
really have to be much more in tune with, you know, following throughout the day. You can't rely on the forecast. You actually have to see what's happening on the radar and
Mm-hmm.
understand where the rain's actually falling, get the actual localized conditions in a way that I just never really worried about back east.
Right. That's interesting.
And you made mention of rain and generally being good. So I'm curious. Let's dig into that a little bit, in the sense that what we've seen a variety of rain in a variety of different places, right? In North Queensland in Australia, it seemed like rain was a suppressant for everything save scrub pythons, because it's not dominated by dry, so it's not this sort of life-bringing force. Instead, it's something to be, carpet pythons can look at it and say, yeah, I'll just sit it out for a week until it's not raining, and, it's fine. They don't need it for the moisture. Simultaneously, we've seen rain, other people present a rain in the desert. That means it's great. But in our experience, and Justin, I don't mean to override you on this, I'm curious your input,
I agree.
is that, it's all about the timing.
Yeah.
Meaning that,
when it rains.
Rain today, did it rain and still warm up in the afternoon, or did it just crush the temperatures into the evening and now nothing will be out? But maybe tomorrow, if it doesn't rain, will be better for it having rained today.
Yeah. It depends. It depends. I love road cruising in the rain sometimes. Sorry,
right.
Something just happened outside. Storming here right now. Yeah, I don't know. Some of my best nights some of my best nights in the Outer Banks were very rainy nights. Rainbow snakes, mud snakes, aquatics. Love the rain. Well, it kind of makes me laugh, honestly. A lot of herpers are like, the roads are wet, I'm not going out, which is great for me because I'm going out and there'll be less cars on the road.
Right.
Even down here, I've had good nights in the rain. I mean, I found the thorn scrub hook nose in the middle of pouring torrential rain, 70 degrees.
I was going to ask you about that one. I was curious what the circumstance around that was.
Yeah, I mean, I think, conditions like, I think there's a lot of herpers who, look for excuses with conditions, like why they shouldn't go out. Like, oh, It's raining. Oh, the moon's too bright. I'm the opposite. I'm like, it's 115 and, there's not a cloud in the sky, but like it rained 4 days ago. So, maybe we try it. And, I think sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. There's, I think confirmation bias is really like a big danger if you want to be a good herper, because I think it's pretty easy to develop stories in your head about, why you saw something, why you're not seeing something.
Right.
And then your behavior adapts to those stories, and then you just believe them more and more. I think sometimes like go outside your comfort zone, go cruise in the rain, go drive under a full moon, and, maybe you'll be surprised.
Right.
Well, you've run right into one of these questions. So do you think the moon makes a difference?
I think it can. I think it, with certain species and certain contexts, it probably can make a difference. That being said, I've had great nights on full moons. I think it really depends on your habitat and your target. I mean, a lot of the snakes we target at night have whole periods of the year where they're surface active in the broad daylight. And so to me, common sense dictates they probably don't care that much that it's a bright moon. But I don't know. I think there's some evidence that it can make a difference. I know it doesn't change my activity level. Like I will, all things being equal, I think I'd rather have not a full moon, but I'm not going to decide to go out or not because there's a full moon.
Okay. I think,
which is fair. It's more from a planning, I think, perspective of saying if you, in the rare instance that you were, all things being equal in the, your availability, you were planning a trip, more pre-planned, like you're going to Australia or going to an international destination where you're going to want to book that beforehand. Is it something you would you think you'd account for and try and go, go last quarter into new, so that, I mean, the thing I always say, right, is it's not only a function of illumination, it's that the moon is literally up during the day. It's not even up at night, basically, when you're in that range.
No, totally. All things being equal, I would choose, to avoid the full moon. I think owls are incredible predators. I think they're more abundant than people know. I think that is honestly a huge part of why the moon makes such a difference. Is I think owls are incredibly effective predators and are very good at hunting things during a full moon. So I know it's been studied in other taxa, not snakes. I don't know if anyone's really done a great deep dive into snake behavior driven by data, which would be interesting. Someone should pick that up. But I know with other taxa
studies, but
there are. I mean, people have shown a correlation with activity and lunar cycles, so it definitely plays a role.
Right. Yeah, and it also depends on the species, because there's some species that absolutely avoid, going out on moonlit nights, but there's also some that are eaten by those species that do go out on moonlit nights because they know those predators are not. So like those mesic level predators probably avoid moonlit nights because they're more obvious, they're bigger, the owls can see them better versus a tiny little thing, that might prefer to go out on moonlit nights. So they can escape their primary predators. But very. I guess that's the beauty too of living in a good place to herp, is you can explore and expand your knowledge and help kind of dispel some of those herper doctrines or whatever we want to call them, where the confirmation bias, solid rules, where that's how Joe did it, and so now I do it that way, and I found herps, and so it must work, and don't go when it's not this or that, and I think you're completely right that there's a lot of things that you can find if you're just out there anytime.
Well, in pre-planning, I guess the, kind of the dichotomy, right, is pre-planning is wholly different from saying, oh, well, I'm just going to stay home. Literally, if that's the, binary choice, it's like, well, that's a whole different thing, man.
Yeah. Well, and if you're putting the effort in, even if conditions are not great, you're probably going to still find something, if you're out there pushing. And, I mean, that was our trip in, March of 2025 to Central Australia. We got there and I was like, we're doomed. Like, it's way too hot. Like, we're not going to see much, and I was all bummed out because it was probably 10, 15 degrees hotter than it should be on average for that time of year. And I was just worried, okay, I planned this huge trip and now it's just going to fail. But we ended up doing pretty dang good. And there was actually a, rainstorm or two that kind of came through and helped a little bit as well. But man, that was, I guess anytime you're in an area for a couple weeks, you're probably going to be okay. Things will change or
enough variance within that time.
Right.
And it's not like you weren't going out either way, especially with the crew you had with you.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the first area we went to was exceedingly dry. So we kind of made the choice, like, let's leave this area and go somewhere else because, and I think you're right there, following the weather patterns within the micro habitats or areas or whatever, or sticking to places that have permanent water sources. If it's really dry, knowing those kind of things, like, okay, well, even if they're not here, they might be over here because of, this condition or that condition. I think that's very helpful. But it's, obviously hard to, you can't predict the weather 6 months in advance if you're going across seas or something. So how close is, I guess, local for you? How far are you willing to drive if you see a good storm?
I'm pretty up for a drive. I think, honestly, I've done day trips that are 5-6 hours away before.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'm going to do a long weekend. I'm not scared to drive 12 hours, 14 hours.
Right.
It's got to be worth it. There's got to be some target that I'm really excited about, but I'm not too worried by a drive.
So if there's a good target and you see like weather conditions shaping up, you're like, okay, I'm going to drive there and hit it right when the hitting's good, kind of thing.
Yeah, as long as work cooperates. Yeah.
I like that attitude. I need to do more of that. I'm excited for retirement, I guess. I'll be able to do that a lot better. It always seems like the best conditions are like, well, I'm kind of busy right now. I can't really get away, or I used up all my PTO or whatever. So maybe I'll have to find a find a way to do what you did and get on a more part-time basis at my work. But that's kind of happening whether I want it to or not. Yeah.
Speaking of natural history, one of your really cool Instagram photos was talking about Thanatosis playing dead in Texas indigo. So Justin and I, on our first trip down there, if I'm remembering it correctly, did look briefly for him around Brackettville, and then Justin had a subsequent trip where he saw one probably crawl away. But Texas indigos, Florida indigos, I'm curious about your experiences looking for them, finding them, that event that was on your Instagram, all of that.
Yeah. So Texas indigo is one of my favorite snakes. My favorite captive snake is a Texas indigo. He's about 7.5 feet long. He's just a brute. Yeah. His name's Otis. So yeah, we have taken 2 trips down to South Texas now. I think the first trip we did really well with indigos. We probably saw like 11 of them in a couple days. They were just the most common snake.
When was that? Like, meaning time of year?
It was winter. I can't remember. It was probably either early December or late November. Okay. And it was all, big breeding males on the move. And literally we were seeing them on the move, like through parking lots, crossing roads, crossing open habitat. And there's nothing like seeing a 6-foot, obsidian black snake just cruising through the grass. Like, that's just such an awesome thing. But yeah, the Thanatosis thing was very interesting. It was the most convincing death feign I've ever seen. My buddy who spotted it. It was actually in a tree. It was like maybe 7 feet up a tree. It was this little, maybe yearling indigo. And we were photographing it, and it just kind of rolled over, opened its mouth, did this kind of cricked neck pose. It was really cool. And I had no idea they did that. And, it's a snake I've kept multiple of for many years now. And that same trip, I saw a speckled racer play dead, which I didn't know they did. Kind of have to plead the fifth about the circumstances of seeing it play dead. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about obviously I noted those two, and I assume that was at the place that people go see them and all that, or at least, yeah. Yeah, so very cool.
Very cool snake. The speckled racer is probably the most beautiful snake in the country. I mean, that is way up there. My favorite snakes to ever find, I think. But the death feigning thing is really interesting to me because I've seen it now in a couple species where I don't think it's really, people don't think about it, at least. I've also seen it in Storaria victa, the Florida brown snake. I actually flipped one, and I thought I had crushed it because it was fully rigid. Its mouth was slightly open. I call my wife over, and I'm like Megan, what the hell? I handed it to her. She's holding it, and like a minute later, it just like snaps to life, and it's totally fine. That's crazy. I don't know. I think it's actually a more common behavior than I think. Everyone thinks Eastern hognose and whatever, but I actually think it's pretty widely adapted behavior for snakes.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Have you seen, so now's as good a time as any to get into your truly unbelievable trip that you turned up 12 plus Simus and 3 pines. So hold on. I heard about this on CCR, but not in a at all sufficient way. Apologies, Zach and Clint. What and how long were you there? This was Georgia or Florida?
Georgia, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, what?
Yeah, I was there 3 days. I don't remember the exact numbers. It was definitely double-digit Simus in all size classes. The pine snakes were all pretty young. I think one of them was probably that year's young. I think the other 2 were maybe yearlings. And we also saw a huge EVB. Actually, other herpers found it, so I'm not going to take credit for that one because that was not my find. But it was super cool to see. It was probably about as thick as my thigh. I mean, wow, it was just incredible.
How many of you were there looking?
So I went solo. One of my friends from Tallahassee came up for one day. Mm-hmm. There are other cars on the road, but
mm-hmm. So you're finding these things pretty much on your own, just out.
All the pine snakes are on my own, and yeah, all those Simus. There's just the diamondback. I did not find the diamondback, but yeah. But yeah, it was great.
And talking, I guess, as good a context as any, to talk about dirt road cruising, which is generally not the most fun thing to do in the world. Any thoughts? Maybe you disagree.
Well,
maybe I would.
It depends, like what your mindset is. So I will say the year before that, I did the same trip. Kind of. I was on my way to Florida, which is another trip we should talk about. But I stopped in Georgia for a day, just me, my thoughts, and the dirt roads. I started cruising. I think at 7 a.m. I was in Habitat. Mm-hmm. I went 12 and a half hours, maybe. Didn't see a single live snake. I'm actually like 100 feet from the edge of the sand, like where the pavement starts. I'm stopped. I'm on Priceline looking for a hotel to crash for the night. And I look up and there's a diamondback just crawling like 20 feet in front of my car. And like, I just think that's just like so emblematic of what the sandhills can be. I mean, it can be truly monotonous, especially when you're just alone in a car for 12 hours. So I don't know. Yeah, love-hate relationship with the sandhills.
Right.
Like, if you do anything for 12 hours, you're going to be bored by the end of it. So you do definitely find ways to entertain yourself. You know, maybe now I would have been stopping more for birds or something to break the time, but podcasts are great. Music's great.
Yeah.
And I guess, while we're here getting into specifics, what is it? Are you taking long passes? Are you covering a bunch of ground? Are you turning around at 3 miles, 5 miles? What does that look like? And obviously it'll vary by geographical context, right? If you're out of Habitat, but if you're in Central Florida where theoretically there are plenty of there's diversity of options, what would that look like?
I prefer long passes. In terms of my like attention span, doing the same mile over and over again gets very repetitive and boring. And like, there are contexts where that's what you really need to do if you want to see your target. But anytime I can avoid that, the longer the pass, the better in my eyes.
And how fast are you? What does your cruising look like? And it probably varies, right? Across pavement versus dirt and all that.
Yeah. It varies a lot, especially on Arizona. I mean, East Coast road cruising is such a breeze in hindsight because even the sand roads are pretty good. Most of it's paved. I saw my first ever rainbow snake. I was going at least 55, probably 60, and it was this tiny little neonate. Out here, you don't get much pavement. I mean, there are definitely paved roads you can cruise. A lot of the best cruising roads are gravel, or that's probably kind of overselling them. Some of them are like rock faces that you can technically get a car over if you have enough clearance. So I definitely go a lot slower on those roads. I think I don't know if my eyes are getting worse. I definitely think my speed has gone down as I've gotten older. I used to cruise like 45, 50 miles an hour, no problem. And now I find myself, probably more in the like 20 to 35 range. Because you miss stuff. Like snakes can be pretty small, especially young snakes. And a lot of the snakes I'm looking for these days are a little bit cryptic, even on these roads. So I'm definitely tending on the slower side these days.
It's interesting. We did some kind of more of that joke thing where you throw the rubber snake out on the road and, wait for your friends to find it. And I think we did that back and forth a couple times, but yeah, we passed it by a few times and didn't see it or didn't know where it went or whatever, who knows, maybe an owl got it or something, but it was like, why didn't we see that, bright orange gummy worm that we threw out on the road?
Yeah. That 3-foot ringneck I was telling you guys about, I watched some herper from Texas drive right past it, and he wasn't even going fast. He was probably going 15. And wow. I've seen a very well followed YouTuber drive right past an adult mountain king.
Right.
It happens.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But I
mean, you can only look at so many
faster
places
than they should, for sure.
Right.
So long as it doesn't mean that you hit it, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen that too, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's frustrating. Yeah, I mean, I guess it happens to the best of us. I still feel bad about that.
Yeah,
King snake I clipped, but my co-pilot was asleep.
Your co-pilot was asleep.
We won't mention who the co-pilot was. But.
It wasn't me.
No, it wasn't
but
Rob.
Part of that question becomes if you're kind of burning at both ends. So this actually does lead well to another question that I know they hit on there, but I'd like to get into because your answer actually fit really well with sort of how I feel about these things. What's your ideal length of time for a trip? And so the context Justin was talking about, I felt like we probably were burning at both ends day and night for probably longer than we should. And that was as much as anything, kind of the distances we were covering. That was the end of a really long day. What does that look like for you, Christian?
Yeah, I think a good trip is, I mean, it depends how far you have to travel, but like, I think an ideal length is like 4 to 5 days. I think after 5 or so days, it's hard to kind of keep up with it. I mean, I'm one of the people who, when I'm out on a field trip, I'm out. Like any chance I get, I'm stretching, you know, the definition of acceptable conditions. I'm like maximizing my time for sure.
Right.
And it's hard to sustain that any more than 4 or 5 days, I think.
Yeah, it's true. I got a kick at it. Like, I think I feel the same way. You almost forget to eat and drink when you're herping, you know, and then you're like, oh man, why am I so, hungry? Oh yeah, I guess I've been herping straight for like 8 hours. But
yeah, I do a lot of solo trips, and like there've definitely been times I call my wife and I'm like, I feel horrible. Like I feel lightheaded. I feel weak. And she's like, when did you eat last? I was like, I don't know if I ate today. I should probably go eat. I mean, I'm definitely that way. It's like I totally like mistreat myself on herp trips.
Yeah. I'm the same way. Even if I'm at the zoo, like my wife's like, we need to stop and eat. I'm like, stop? What? Eat? What are you talking about? It's not how this works.
Yeah. I mean, like most of these trips were out in the middle of nowhere. So
right. You don't
even
have
a
much
meal was
options.
like $17 beef jerky from a gas station. And,
right. Yeah. If you're wanting 5-star, restaurants and stuff, herp trips are not the place to go for those. Yep.
Yeah, I'm not one to eat McDonald's at home, but on herp trips, I eat so much McDonald's because like you always know what you're gonna get. They're open at all hours.
Yeah.
You know, you get an egg McMuffin, get you through the day.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely the time to take advantage of those garbage places. Sorry, McDonald's.
Big stomach ache to me, but I don't know. It's better with other people.
Yeah, well, we've had some stories about eating and having the after effects of
for sure. There's no question about that. I'm just saying.
I mean, even some of the best food we ate, it came back to haunt us later in the where's the bathroom? I gotta get there now.
There he goes.
Yeah. If toilet paper is not in your herp kit, like add it today before you regret it. That's something you want to have before you know you need it.
Yeah. I just bought these little like tablets, and you put a little water on them. They expand into like a 4x4 wet wipe, basically. So I'm excited to. Well, I'm not excited to give them a try, but I'm excited to carry them with me because they're, they don't take up a lot of space. They're kind of dehydrated toilet paper sheets or whatever. So it's kind of nice.
I know. Well, and I remember this time last year when Nipper, who always talks about his bog roll and, takes great pride in it. And I said, dude, I'm going to need that. And he was like, oh, I just used it. And I was like, I thought you said you came prepared here. I was relying upon you. And that was to my misfortune, for sure, over in Delaware.
Prepared for himself, not for his whole party. Yeah.
But he hadn't clarified that. So, yeah.
Right. You bragged about your roll of toilet paper.
And then in my moment of need, he let me down.
Yeah, there's been some some of those issues where I don't know. A lot of times I've gone in unprepared too. I haven't got to the point where I've like gone on a big trip without like a headlamp or something. But I've definitely like forgotten important things or things that would be really helpful. I'm like, I really wish I would have brought that. One time we were in southern Arizona, and I was just south of Tucson herping, and I got there a couple days before the guys, so I was out looking for stuff to try to get the party started early. And I went to go to sleep for the night. I just couldn't road cruise anymore or whatever. And so I like pull over, and I'm like, well, I'm going to get into my sleeping bag. I can't find my sleeping bag, my pad, my tent. Like I can't find it. I'm like, I swear I packed this stuff. So I'm just like shivering, like just laying on my car seat in the night. And then, we have the trip. It's a great trip. And the rest of the nights we're in like an Airbnb type situation that Rob booked. But, I get home and I lift up my seat, and there's my sleeping bag and my pad and my tent just squirreled away under the. I folded this, and I had I think I had books for some, somebody,
and
I left them under there too. I'm like, oh, no, I'm an idiot. Yeah, that's figures there. So even when I am prepared, yeah.
Yeah, I've definitely been out on the middle of the night on the road with my iPhone flashlight because my dumbass forgot my headlamp or flashlight.
Yeah,
we've all been there.
I guess too, if you're chasing weather and you're like spur of the moment trips, that's probably going to happen. I just need like a checklist that I can like refer to really quick to make sure I don't forget anything. And like, if I get something new, I have to put on the checklist, like these toilet paper things. I just remembered I had those, I'm like, I need to put that on my list so I don't forget them at the end of the month here.
Yeah. So I was embarrassing to admit, but I actually have like a Sterilite bin in the back of my car that never leaves the car, that has all the essentials in it because I don't trust myself.
Right.
And
that's smart.
I'm a little bit of a prima donna with the windshield. So I've got like my own, windshield squeegee and wiper fluid and, everything I could want.
Oh, that's awesome.
In the field. I don't have to remember. It just lives there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's perfect. Jordan had a similar setup. And Dustin too. Dustin had like his cook stove. He pulls out, makes us these bacon wrapped hot dogs in the middle of the, the Palencios. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah, good guy. So yeah, and like he had like an awning that he set up so we could have some cover while it rained on us, and it was pretty nice.
Which we needed up at the spot. Actually, so this kind of is a natural transition. So going back to the conversation about publicly known spots for specific things, in that Snakes and Snake Hunting, Caulfield talks about finding price eye at Barfoot, right? And our own lived experiences, and this aligns with what other people have said, is like, it's a question of the utility of a public spot, particularly when maybe that's somewhat of a red herring. It's not that it's entirely wrong, but it's a slight tweak on that concept. But I have noticed that price eye is not something that's on your Instagram. Is that something you've found at this point?
Nope, I'm not. That is.
Have you gone out that way?
One of the white whales.
Is that just not a priority?
Yeah. No, it's a priority. I've been in habitat for them many times.
Okay. Yeah,
spots
we
I know they exist.
Yeah. We can chat about that. And you could read into what I said. But the other thing that would fit into those same boxes, and then we'll talk about specific animals that really drew me from what is on your Instagram. So you found all the Siamus that there are to find, and then you've seen a bunch of Eastern hognose. Have you found Westerns?
I have not found Nassicus. I have found a couple Kennerlii. Mm-hmm. I've been in range of Nassicus literally one day herping, which is weird.
With Kansas, like Western Kansas, is that where you were?
Yeah, I was in Hayes, Kansas for one day. I didn't find him. Not shocking. I've looked for them in the Kankakee Sands area. It's one of my fascinations out there. I've got a buddy who lives out there, and he posted an INET observation one day of a hognose, and he just assumed it was an Eastern, which is fair. And a lot of time passed, and someone was like, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not an Eastern hognose. That's an Nassicus." And it definitely was an Nassicus. He found it roadkill. He didn't collect it because he didn't think anything of it. And he actually reached out to, IDNR, try to report it. They totally blew him off. They're like, I was a released pet. I was like, this is like one of the most impoverished areas in the country. This is a road that, abuts perfect Nasicus habitat. So I guess I've looked for Nasicus a lot there. I've never found one. But that is on my list. I need to go up to Colorado or New Mexico or something and check that one off.
Yeah. Which is funny relative to having seen. So where have you, well, a couple quick thoughts, I guess, right? Is obviously, so the study site was Zach stuff. They're turning up both of them, which is interesting. And it is funny in the context of Illinois, just because, and I don't know if the law has changed, but it was selling captive bred Western hognose at Tinley was always an issue because theoretically there were existing animals. So it's really weird that DNR, it doesn't look, that's not a great look for DNR that they weren't interested in that record, to be honest.
I agree. No, I agree. And it was right against the Nature Conservancy property. It would be so easy to set up a drift fence there and try to figure it out, but there was just no interest. So I think they live there. I mean, probably not in large numbers, but just Occam's razor, it makes way more sense that was a wild snake than a raised
absolutely
pet.
Right.
And on the Kennerly eye, so where have you seen him? Because that's the heterodon that's missing from my U.S. forms. Well,
no heterodon.
Yeah.
Dang it.
I've seen him in West Texas and then I think technically New Mexico, but the very edge of New Mexico.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I think I know the spots. I've looked there and I just haven't been able to turn one up. But
well, we've seen a couple DORs, but yeah.
Yeah, and I'd love to hike one up. So I've hiked up all the other, 3 of the 4 if you took it as species, and I got to look for Duskies too. But that would be pretty great. But
that
I'll
was
take
another
anything at this point. Yeah.
Another example of herpers missing something right in front of them, right? three people walking and 2 miss it and 1 spots it.
It happens. 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
I hiked up my first ever Simus, and it was one of my favorite moments in herping. It was, we were on this trail, and I was looking for a specific habitat feature, and I pulled up Google Maps, and I was like, a couple 100 feet off the trail was exactly what I was looking for. It was this little, 6-foot patch of bare mineral soil, and I was like, okay, I'm gamble, but I'm going to go out there. So I hike out there, and it was like someone had placed it just right in the middle of this sand patch, just this little hognose. And so I'm yelling over to my friends, and my buddy Peyton, who lives in Southern California. So we're out there. I'm part of this nonprofit called SEB.
I did want you to talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. So this was a group field trip. One of our friends was out there. Her name's Tyler, and she inventories gopher tortoise burrows for the state. Or at least at the time she did. That was her whole job. She surveyed, I think at that point she had surveyed 4,500 tortoise burrows in her life. She had never seen a Cooper eye. Wow. Well, my buddy Peyton, on his way out to come see the Simus, he's probably about 10 feet from me, pokes his head, down this, kind of does that, looks down this tortoise burrow that's 10 feet from where I found the Simus. The third one he'd ever looked down, and there's just this big Eastern indigo coiled up just under the mouth of this burrow. And so he calls me over. So I run over. I have this, my lifer Simus in my hand, and I'm looking at, my first ever Cooper eye. And I was like, well, you can't beat that.
Right.
And my friend Tyler, given her job, she kind of went up the chain of command, got permission. It was a meaningful observation to see an indigo anywhere in Florida. She got permission to bring the scope out. And the next day they actually got video of this indigo down in the scope, in the burrow with the scope. So that was super cool.
That's
probably one of my favorite memories.
Yeah, that's crazy lucky though.
Yeah, well, and then we got a pine snake on the way out. It was insane.
you're missing a short tail from being unreal. Yeah,
right. And I mean, in the context of your friend spending all that time in 4,500 burrows and not seeing one, and then somebody just
and that's what we talked about with Dallin, right? Is that it was 45 minutes for us looking for a pyro in Utah, and Dustin turns up a mating pair on the trail, and Dallin, it took him 2 years, right? As the thing of his living in Utah and the thing of his focus.
And he says us without me. That was the kicker. I hadn't made it down yet, so I missed out. And I hadn't seen one in Utah at that point because I was so desert focused. I didn't realize cool snakes lived in the mountains too. Even though I was kind of a little upset. My dad had found one back in like the 60s, and he had a picture of him holding this mountain king snake, and he's like, "What's this snake? It's really pretty." I'm like, "Where did you find that? Why am I just finding out about this? Why didn't you take me there when I was a kid?" Yeah, I mean, we spent a lot of time in mountain king habitat, either on the way to the desert or the way back from the desert, and I could have gone up the canyons there and seen some stuff when I was younger, but just didn't know. Didn't realize, the ignorance of youth.
Absolutely. Well, and so while we're on that topic, Christian, relative to your list, and it probably varies based on either the number you found or sort of the interaction, and that's fine. Happy to hear sort of your personal take on it. But for your list and counting something, do you need to take a picture of it?
Yes. Yeah. Verifiable. Yeah. It's got to be an identifiable picture for sure.
So like the first Massasaugas you saw when you were a kid, theoretically, maybe your date ties to that, but the first one that counts, how does that fit in?
Yeah, it's the first time I photographed it. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I don't count stuff if I can't prove it.
Yeah, I like it, man.
I mean, there's at least 3 snakes I've seen. Most of them more than once. I've just never gotten an ideable photo, so they're not checked off.
Right.
Do you have to be the one who finds it, or is it a common venture thing? What does that look like for you?
So I think my paradigm's similar to yours. It's common venture. I'm not going to take credit for some random group's find, and I have to see it like roughly in situ. Like it can't have been removed from where it was found. I don't necessarily need to see it, under the rock, but like it needs to still be in the place it was. And most of the stuff on my list at this point I've seen for myself, by myself. There's just a couple ones like the Cooper Eye that I have not found it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I was just from looking at the picture, right? And I think I'd heard the context of that. So you had actually seen it absent, being in the burrow where you get the camera picture. I am curious, and I don't know really how I feel on it in terms of finding either having found things that are found based on a pitfall trap or based on utilizing a probe, something like that, and how that would fit into a life list context. Do you have any thoughts on either of those?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Because I've never really set up a trap of any sort. I've actually thought about, and I probably will eventually set up a drift fence in my yard with a camera. I don't think I would count that because I just don't think it's the same as seeing it in person. Pitfall's interesting. I guess maybe if I was the one to set up the trap and check it and find it, I think I could probably wrap my head around that. And yeah,
we just had a show with Dustin Smith where he talked. So he found he was working at Zoo Miami and set up pitfalls and wound up. And I may be misremembering, but I think at least certainly once, if not twice, over the course of years, turned up rimrock crown snakes, which are otherwise unfindable. Right. So it is one of those things that it's like probably, he's one of very few to have that as a record, counting it from having found it in a pitfall that he set up. Right. And in that context, and that otherwise it's probably just going to be a zero. How that influences it.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I think it's fair to count that. Like, especially if you set the trap and you check it, I think that is fair.
Yeah, maybe similar situation of like a well or something that, things fall into and they can't get out. I think our friend Dustin found a thorn scrub hook nose in one of those situations where he was just clearing out animals that had fallen in there and couldn't get out. And then he lifted a rock and there's a thorn scrub hook nose, I think that's still, I guess I would probably count
I would count that for sure. I think that isn't, and that sounds like that was at least naturally occurring, or
right? It's an active effort, right?
Yeah, it was an old cattle, trough type, something to do with cattle or something like that. It was like a foundation of a building or something. It was kind of, But
I think you count those. Yeah. I don't want to be too much a stickler. At the end of the day, it's just like whatever, like makes you feel, accomplished or whatever you're looking for out of it. I think. Like if people stretch their personal definitions, I don't care. If someone else finding a snake and you coming across it 15 minutes later, like if that's satisfying for you, then I'm not gonna police your happiness. So.
You're not challenging anybody's list.
There's no herp.
No list police here. Yeah,
that's something my friends and I joke about all the time. I think a lot of people comport themselves as if there's some hall of fame that they're trying to be a first ballot herper for, and at the end of the day,
I'd like to see that list. Because sometimes I think I'm a pretty good herper until I talk to people like you or Jordan Parrott or somebody. I'm like, oh, I suck. Like I've seen nothing compared to some people.
But hopefully, to the extent that's inspiring, right? I think that's good.
Yeah.
The aspect that I think. Christian, it sounds like you're keeping a really good perspective on, is that if seeing those things instead just was a disincentive for you to do it, then that's not helpful, right?
Right. Yeah, and that goes back to the whole I didn't have to find it. It's like if I really set that rule for myself, that would totally disincentivize going out and finding snakes with my friends, and that's not a good outcome. Like it's fun to find snakes with my friends.
Yeah, you don't want to be the hermit who has to find it on his own and doesn't want to herp with anybody because they might find your find or whatever. Yeah, I've got an Occam razor situation with the hognose where my daughter talked me into letting her drive, and we were driving. I said, I think that, I was like, oh, I think that was a snake, and she clipped it, and we came back and it was a hognose, a Mexican hognose, and so it posed up nicely for photos, but it was dead. But I did see it alive, so do I count that or not? It's
that is a tough one, yeah.
Because I did see it and I got pictures of it, but I didn't. The two weren't.
It was really
my first thorn scrub hook nose was even worse than that because I found it and I thought it was fine. Mm-hmm. I thought it was acting a little weird. I thought, maybe it's playing dead. I don't know. And I did the thing I'm not super proud of is I bagged it to take pictures of it overnight.
Right.
And I wake up in the morning and there's blood coming out of its mouth and it's dead.
Yeah.
And it's like, shit, it got hit by a car before I saw it. I just had no idea. And if I would have just taken pictures of it
and let it go, then
I would let it go. I would have never known.
You would never known. Right.
But I don't count things unless they survive. I don't count things that are mortally wounded. So
right.
So that was a real dilemma. But.
Yeah. I will say I would like to police the idea that somebody's counting a DOR that's like permanently embedded into the pavement. Like, no, that doesn't count. Yeah. But
and if nothing else, it undermines the credibility of everything else they're saying, right? That was humorous.
You haven't seen that species if you saw,
if
Kentucky Fried
counts,
Chicken.
Then it removes all credibility from everything you're talking about.
You're not making the Hall of Fame list.
Yeah, no way.
Yeah.
Here in Colorado, we have a Massasauga population that's been recognized as sort of intermediate between the Western and desert stuff for a long time. And it took me more trips than I would have liked to go to check that one off with Brendan Hediger, who we've had on the show, who was instrumental in the project. And obviously, I'd found a couple DORs and things, but couldn't make it work. But the first one that I had seen live in the field didn't count for me because a different group had turned it up first, right? I had there's a western edge and a eastern edge of the northwestern and southeastern, and I hadn't timed it right and was like, I'll start on the northwest and work over there. And then, they had found it first. So it didn't count for me, but yeah, you probably won't mind being shouted. Tim Warfel, who's well known, Herper bro, a little old to be a Herper bro, but still kind of runs in those circles and things. Was asking me, but I didn't fully appreciate who he was. Didn't know him nearly as well at the time. This sort of stuff, and he's like, "Well, does this count for you?" But I was like, well, if I found it, then yeah. It took me getting back in the car, leaving the group, to realize, oh, his question was, am I going to count this one? And the answer, I kept obtusely saying, no, that it wouldn't count for me. But I wasn't saying it explicitly because I didn't understand his question because I was photographing the snake. And, but he was judging me based on what my answer would be. And I didn't give him a clear answer because I didn't take enough time to appreciate his question. But out of that was like, oh, they had cruised it. Would I count it? And the answer was no, but I didn't explicitly say that. So until later, I said, oh, that was you. And my answer was no. I just wasn't saying no.
Hey, you mentioned your first thorn scrub hooknose. That's a species that I'm really interested in. Do you have other experiences with that species? Have you found more?
Yeah, there's a spot where, if you know the right conditions and they're relatively predictable. So.
Okay, that's cool because that's one that's kind of high on my list. I love that. I mean, they're just so cool looking.
They're cool.
See one.
When you say spot, are you talking about the general spot or something hyper specific that you've worked out based on your own sort of?
It's pretty specific. Yeah, it's a stretch of a road that I think a lot of people have a general idea where, but they show up on a very specific part of that road and
specific time of.
Have you found the other super interesting thing down there?
The vine snake? No, I have not, and that is another white whale. So Price-eye, Cerberus, and Oxybellus have eluded me.
Well, two
Cerberus,
of the three I've seen. So there you go. Yeah. And Justin as well. Yeah.
Vine snakes. Yeah. Vine snake's the most frustrating because I've tried the most.
I've seen a vine snake, just not in Arizona. It was Costa Rica.
Oh, there you go.
It was just waiting for me on the beach. We were done surfing and we were walking and we walked through this little trellis and it's just hanging down waiting for me to grab it. So, yeah, very cool.
Well, and even the thorn scrubs, right? When you're actually in Mexico, it's a wholly different proposition than it is in Arizona. Right. So. Lots
of species that just come up into the U.S. They're a lot easier to find in Mexico. Switax geckos, those are the same kind of thing. They can be pretty thick, coastal, Baja.
That one's a frustrating one because I have looked for those a lot, and looking for them is actually pretty tedious. Well, really, any way you're doing it.
That's the one of the three that we haven't found.
I think my neck never recovered. It's still yeah.
It'll happen. I mean, it'll happen.
Right.
Cerberus. So one weird thing living out here is obviously I knew the monsoon was influential, especially with Crotalus. Mm-hmm. What I really underaccounted for is Crotalus are almost non-existent here until the monsoons. I mean, I would say the first 3 months I lived here, I saw probably 4 or 5 atrax. I probably saw 10 to 12 brown eye, my perceptions got totally flipped on their head because, anyone who's herped out here in the monsoon knows you usually hit a point with atrax where you might not even really stop for them, or you might just be kind of summarily scooting them off the road and moving on because you're seeing 5 or 6 a night. It really is crazy how little the croats seem to move here in the spring, early summer. So I think Cerberus will be relatively easy now that the monsoons have started, and I think Price-eye will happen pretty soon. But vine snakes, I have not figured them out.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, and Justin, I think the same is true for you. We haven't come in true monsoon. We always come kind of earlier or later. So on the back end of it or whatever, but not sort of that late July, August. I certainly haven't been down then. Mm-hmm. I was shocked. We had come down so my daughter could check out U of A, amongst other things, over spring break a couple Marches back, and I was amazed that nothing was going on what you would think would be probably a marginal plus day, and there was nothing out at all. And it led me to think, okay, that area, because there are so many optimal days, what would count as, you would definitely see snakes in Colorado on a day like this, these sort of conditions. There was nothing going at all, and that was really interesting.
Yeah, May here sucks, which is very weird for me because I think almost
so
anywhere else,
everywhere else,
May is like the prime time, and like May, June, like forget about it. Those are probably two of the worst months to be out here. There's certain stuff that moves, and that's one of the cool things about living here is I get to see the patterns, right? Like there were a couple weeks in May where there were sand snakes everywhere, a couple weeks in June where there were brown eye everywhere. And with, different types of fauna, like that same pattern happens, you have a skunk month and the ringtails just started popping up. So it is kind of cool to see those trends, but it's surprising. And it is definitely like different than my experiences back east. I thought, usually everything kind of emerged at the same time, kind of had the same activity pattern. And here it's like very much not that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess that's the beauty, because you probably wouldn't plan a trip, if you had to drive the 15 hours or whatever from Rob's house to Southern Arizona, you probably wouldn't plan it in June just for that reason. If the only target is brown eye, then maybe so, but and that might be the case for me. I might have to drive out just for that because they're so cool, but But maybe that's like fly into Tucson, herp a couple days, and then fly back or something. So it's
there you go,
spending a week. But that's tricky. With the vine snakes, I've always heard they really like the heat, like they're out in the middle of the heat. So it was interesting that you found yours in like rains and things.
Well, that was the thorn scrub. Yeah.
Oh,
no,
okay.
It actually raises the question, Christian. So the question is always sort of the validity of the information that we're getting, right? So as Justin's relaying,
if it's a red herring or
like, okay, is this true? Is it not? And if it is true, is it instructive or not? Right, that sort of feedback.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Certainly.
I'm not lying to you guys.
Turned one up down
there. Yeah. No.
And it was interesting. That's his story to tell, not ours, not least because I only half remember it, and I'm not sure it's correct. But the way that it had gone. But certainly we've looked for him, and that's a fair target to remain. So.
Yeah, but I mean, Dustin's found he's found a couple now, right? And he's spent a lot of time looking.
One, maybe two, but it took a while.
Yeah. He got one, kind of got away, but he kind of had its tail for a minute, and then it slipped away.
I wasn't really counting out.
Yeah, exactly. But then he got one for and it's a bunch of herpers have spent long time looking down there without success. I mean, it's kind of the edge of their range. They're just difficult to find there, just hard to see.
But it's amazing habitat to spend time in. I don't mind looking for them. I've seen so much cool bycatch looking for those guys. The hard part is the idea of going out in the middle of the day and driving that road is it's tough.
Well, and is that right? That's the question I have with that one of like, so we hear that, right? And it's like, okay, even in the context of saying I'm taking as truthful those it was 110 or full blown and it's going out, but then is that the random one-off or is that the pattern?
Right.
And it's tough to say on something that's so unusual, right? Or such.
But I guess it's easier looking for them that way because you're just road cruising with the AC on. It's not
road cruising that road is not easy though. Especially when border patrols careening around at 60 mile an hour.
Or drug dealers. I've
wanted to go try to shine for them, but that is not a unsketchy place to be.
At night. Man, we saw a crazy,
I like that.
we saw a really nice blackneck garter snake down there that was just glowing. I mean, that greenish color on it. It was incredible looking snake. I'm not going to keep Thamnophis, but that one was tempting me.
my favorite ever Mountain King is from that road.
Really?
My favorite one I've ever seen. It's just so gorgeous.
That's cool. Yeah, it does well, no, I won't say anything, but yeah, really, really cool snake down there for sure.
The answer to what you're not saying is yes.
Yes.
So amongst your recent finds, that you want to talk about that mountain lion thing? That was pretty wild, man.
That's a pretty rare thing to see, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, that ties in well with our conversation because I saw it right in the mouth of the canyon. I always poke around for vine snakes, and there were two of them. I think, one chased the other down the street. I followed them. One stopped right off the road, and I think you can kind of tell it's kind of like playfully like pouncing at the other one towards the end of that video.
Right.
That was cool. I'd seen mountain lions before. I'd never really gotten to like appreciate one. It always had just been like, oh, it ran in front of my car. I got a glimpse in the woods. And that is a amazing animal. I mean, the video doesn't like portray the scale of it very well. But that's a big animal and athletic and fast, and it's so cool.
Yeah, that's impressive. Very cool.
One of my favorite topics to hit on, ticks and chiggers. Do you have thoughts on those from your various, especially if you were kind of Midwest into East Coast? That Justin and I are lucky that.
Why do you think I moved?
Yeah, right. As I was going to say, it turns out I didn't know at the time that Utah has the greatest diversity in chigger species, apparently, of any state in the U.S. Surprising.
Oh,
it's crazy. Yeah,
but they're still rare on the ground. Only in one particular spot have we really gotten into trouble with them.
Yeah, I have, like, knock on all the wood, I've yet to encounter a tick out here. I've had random bites show up. Maybe those are chiggers. I don't care that much about that. I hate ticks. And Texas is the worst. I had days in South Texas where I came home and I was just lint rolling myself. Just like taping my pants to my socks to my shirt. I just hate ticks, and like it gets pretty bad in the middle of the country, the East Coast sometimes. I know a couple people who have gotten alpha-gal, Lyme disease. That is
scary. Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
not be fun.
Life without red meat would be tough. I don't know.
I don't know, man. Although. So we were just down in Louisiana and Mississippi the beginning of last month, and I did the taping your pants to your shoes, or we all did, and all it seemed to do was concentrate the chiggers into this really narrow band right around my ankles, and it actually caused them to swell up in a way that I've never seen before. It was like
scary.
Yeah.
Oh man. So what are your big targets in Arizona now?
I love mountain kings and green rats, and like those.
Have you seen the northern ones?
Like true pyros. I have not. No, I've not. I have not actually been in northern Arizona, which definitely on the list. I want to go up and see the garters up there, and not pursue them, but be in their habitat.
Absolutely. Always important.
I happened to see one on my drive north up to Utah. They're really cool.
But I've never done northern Arizona. I haven't been to the Grand Canyon since I was like 3, so I don't even remember it. And it's very accessible now. Like I'll definitely make that happen soon. But no, I like mountain kings are a big obsession of mine. I could see 1 million of them and still not be satisfied. So that's what I'm chasing most of the time.
Cool. Well, let me know when you want to go look for them in Utah. I'll join you.
Hell yeah, man. That'd be fun.
Yeah, when you have to find them in my state. Yeah, they're cool snakes. I've only seen a couple, two or three, but the one was on the north rim of the Grand Canyon, headed down into the Grand Canyon. We saw one just kind of
the southern limit of the labialis.
That's super cool.
Yeah,
I think that's one of like the coolest things about them. That was the most surprising for me when I started researching them and looking for them, is like how surface active they are. Yeah, like I've seen most of mine just out and about. I don't really flip for them much. So
so much better than milk snakes. Yeah, that's all you do for milk is flip.
Yeah.
You want to tell us a little bit more about the snake evolution and biogeography thing?
Sure. Yeah, so it's a nonprofit run by my buddy Alex McKelvey, who was formerly part of the Burbank Lab and still does a lot of stuff with that group. And basically the mission is to kind of train, hobbyists, students, field skills that help them advance, science. So collecting specimens, collecting tissue from roadkill, depositing things in museums. We do 1 or 2 trips a year where it's kind of like a workshop where most of our time is spent in the field, but we also teach people how to like pickle specimens, take the data you need to get value out of like roadkill. And we do a little bit of professional development. So helping students kind of like apply for scholarships, do posters at conferences like JMIH, stuff like that. The kind of like overall goal is to get more specimens in museums, because like it used to be before INAP, before HerpMapper, like that was the main way citizens participate in science, is they would actually donate dead snakes to get deposited in museums. That doesn't happen much anymore, except by academics, people who are, actively trying to do that. So there's so much more information, data, like so much more good can come out of a museum specimen that could come out of a picture associated with a, location and time. Anyway, it can be used for molecular studies. It can be used for gut content studies, for morphometrics. Like you can get so much information that's tied to a specific time out of a dead snake that's, fixed and submitted to museums. So
yeah,
they do
a pickle party out here at BYU. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So any random herper can bring all their specimen that they've collected on the road, and
it's cool.
Put them in the collection at the Bean Museum. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
That's the big tripping block is permitting, and so I've got a salvage permit for Arizona and New Mexico now. But it's hard to empower people with permits because states weirdly are very gatekeepy about their roadkill. Right. So there's so many snakes that I've seen that I can't collect because museums will not accept depositions usually if there's not a permit associated with them. And so, good, valuable scientific data just rots on the road because of bureaucracy. It's very frustrating.
Right. Yeah. That is obnoxious.
Yeah. But it's a fun group. We do field trips. This year it's actually in Arizona. So
nice.
My neck of the woods makes it a whole easier.
Right. That's probably good and bad though. Right. In the sense of it's not going to some exotic locale for you or whatever. So
yeah.
Convenient, but not
yeah. And all the onus will be on me to find everything. So
yeah. The pressure's on, man.
Right. Yeah. You're the local guide.
Yeah, exactly.
And then anybody who finds something that you didn't find, like, oh, you missed this one, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Much less walking by it or
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we didn't really hit on it. So glad to hear that you're into hiking stuff up. Are you a fast or slow guy? Are you looking at all the nooks, trying to really suss that out, or do you believe in sort of startling things or coming up on them quickly?
I think like my general approach, it depends a little bit on species and stuff, but I would say like the most general answer is I'm usually moving pretty quickly on hikes until I hit, little microhabitats I like, places I've seen stuff before, stuff that particularly grabs my interest, and then I'm very slow and methodical. And so I think it's just a lot of like getting, obviously being observant the whole time, but getting to the spots where I think will yield the best results.
Very cool. Well, honestly, I think there's going to be more than one of these if you're game for it, because there's a ton of stuff that we didn't get to that's there. But we want to recognize your time and maybe chat for a little bit off air. So
yeah, certainly.
Yeah, Justin, if you want.
Yeah, we'll close it out then. Appreciate you coming on. So, Select Serpents is your Instagram handle. People can see your stuff mainly there. Is that the
select.snakes is the Instagram handle.
Select.snakes. Okay.
It's technically for a business, but it's just my field herping pictures at this point. So
okay. And if they want to buy a snake from you, is that separate place?
Yeah, reach out. I took a kind of slow year this year with the move, like moving all the snakes across the country was horrible. But I have like 19 Crebos hatching right now.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
I just got a litter of salt marsh snakes. I think I have maybe the first like visual morph of a salt marsh snake. I popped out I think is a T positive albino.
Wow.
Salt marsh snakes. So
that's cool.
That one's not going anywhere, but the siblings, maybe we can talk about. I'm going to have some bulls and some Louisiana pine. So yeah, like reach out if you're interested in any of that stuff.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks again for coming on. We'll thank Eric and Owen for hosting our podcast, and we'll catch you later for another episode of Reptile Fight Club.